On the night of February 1, 1959, in a freezing pass in the northern Ural Mountains, 9 experienced hikers tore their way out of their tent from the inside. They were partially dressed. They were barefoot. The temperature was around minus 30 degrees Celsius. Within hours, all 9 were dead. Some bodies showed massive internal injuries with no external wounds. The official Soviet investigation closed 4 months later, citing a, quote, compelling natural force. The investigators sealed the files for 30 years. 65 years later, despite an official Russian reinvestigation, we still cannot say with certainty what happened that night. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident. The expedition was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. He was experienced, organized, and respected. His group consisted of 7 men and 2 women, all in their early 20s, all members of the Institute's hiking club. Their goal was to ski 190 miles through the northern Urals to reach Mount Otorten, a difficult Category 3 winter expedition that would qualify them for the highest tier of Soviet hiking certification. They left the city of Sverdlovsk by train on January 23. They reached the village of Vizhay, the last settled outpost before the wilderness, on January 25. Their last photograph, taken on January 28, shows them setting up camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, the Mansi name for the mountain that translates as Dead Mountain. 2 days later, in a snow-packed valley about a mile from the planned route, they pitched their final tent. They never broke camp. When the group missed their telegram deadline of February 12, search teams set out. On February 26, rescuers found the tent. It had been cut open from the inside. Sleeping bags, cameras, food, and even most of their clothing were still inside. A trail of footprints in the snow led downhill toward a cedar tree about a mile away. The footprints were made by people walking in socks and bare feet. 2 bodies were found at the base of the cedar tree, near the remains of a small fire. 3 more bodies were strung out between the cedar and the tent, frozen in postures that suggested they had been trying to climb back up. The remaining 4 bodies took 2 more months of searching to find. They were buried under 12 feet of packed snow in a ravine. Their injuries told a strange story. One had a fractured skull. Another had broken ribs. Yet none had visible external trauma severe enough to cause those internal injuries. The chief investigator, Lev Ivanov, wrote in his report that the force required to produce such damage would normally come from a high-speed impact, like a car crash. Some of their clothing was tested for radiation and showed elevated levels. Now the theories. Theory 1 is the avalanche. In 2021, Swiss researchers Johann Gaum and Alexander Puzrin published a peer-reviewed paper proposing that a small slab avalanche, triggered by an unusual cut the hikers had made into the snow to set up their tent, could explain the chest injuries and the panicked flight. The Russian government's 2019 reinvestigation reached the same conclusion. But critics point out that no debris field was found, the slope angle was below typical avalanche thresholds, and slab avalanches do not usually leave a tent standing afterwards. Theory 2 is military weapons testing. The Soviet Union was actively testing parachute mines and rocket fuel in the region. The radiation on the clothing, the orange glow witnesses reportedly saw in the sky that night, and the classified nature of the case all point this direction. Skeptics note that no military debris was ever found at the site. Theory 3 is infrasound, a phenomenon where wind passing over specific terrain can produce low-frequency sound waves that induce panic and disorientation in humans. This could explain why 9 experienced hikers cut their way out of a warm tent into a deadly blizzard. Theory 4 covers more exotic claims, from the so-called Yeti note in the group's journal to UFO sightings reported by other expeditions in the region that same week.